Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Let's Chat Reality. I'm Michael.
And I'm Molly.
And today we are talking about Survivor 48, Episode 4, as well as Temptation Island, which is not the first season of Temptation Island, but it is the first season on Netflix and the first season that we are talking about on the pod. And it's Molly's first season watching. So, very curious to hear all your thoughts on Temptation Island. But let's go ahead and just start with Survivor. Now, Molly, I know you actually watched this episode at a watch party with none other than Mitch from this season. So tell me about what that was like.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was at a bar in Austin that Mitch was having a watch party at, and he had some of his friends there. Some people came in from Waco who he teaches with, so that was cute. They had shirts on that had Mitch and like in big letters and I have his faces on it. So that was cute to see all the support, and it was also a good episode for Mitch overall. So that was also exciting to see that it was like we could cheer him on like while we're watching there with him. So that was a lot of fun, and he was also so great in person. It was really nice talking to him. He's just as you would expect, as nice as you think he is. He is really nice in person.
Oh, that's nice. And not only was it a good episode for Mitch, but it was just a really good episode. I thought it was. I mean, I'm seeing some people say best episode of the new era, best episode since Operation Italy. Like it was a really good episode. So a fun one, I'm sure, to watch with a big group of people, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yes, I know it was a good one, and before we started the episode, he kind of teased at it being a good one. So I was like, oh, is it what's gonna happen? And it did live up to that.
Yes, it did. Well, let's go ahead and get started then with the episode. So, we start out with Vula after last episode's crazy tribal council, and Say feels a little bit conflicted about Cedric since he saved her, but he was also the one to put her in that danger. So, Mary and Say actually decide after Cedric basically saved Say with the condition that she and Mary figure things out, get along, and they do just that. Mary and Say decide to finally start working together. Now, were you surprised by this? Do you think them working together will last? Now, obviously, spoiler alert, it kind of gets broken up here with Swap, but do you think should they stay in the game with Swap, get to the merge together? Do you think they will actually start working together or will this fall apart?
I don't know. I feel like so much can happen in between now and then that I'm not totally sure. Like, I want to say that they could work together, but I also think because it was just so few of them at that point in their tribe left that it was like, well, I kind of have to work with you now, was kind of what it seemed to be almost. So I'm not sure that they really will work together.
I agree with that. I mean, what options do they have? Like, Say felt betrayed by Cedric, so her only other option is Mary. So if she had any other options, she might have looked that way, but with just the two of them together. Now, I actually do think that they have a respect for each other. That I do think that, let's say, come the merge, Say and Mary both kind of feel on the outs with their swapped tribes, and they kind of turn to each other and say, hey, we have a history. We're kind of both in the same situation here. Let's work together. We know each other. Like, we can be really good allies and assets for each other. So I could see that happening potentially, but you're right that so much is going to happen before then. So who knows where they're going to be. And I think that I would say, an equally good chance that they will work together as they won't at this point. It's just so hard to say. But I would love it. I would love to see them work together. I think it. I mean, I know that you won't get this reference, but on Australian Survivor Titans versus Rebels, there was Kirby and Ferris, who were these adversaries turned allies, and it was just had this really complex relationship. And the difference is they stayed on the same tribe together all throughout, and they just at a certain point it was like, hey, we've been working against each other for so long, but we have this long history that I don't have with anyone else. And just the act of like working against each other and going blow for blow, you just gain a respect for each other. And so I think that there's a possibility of that happening, but the fact that they aren't swapped together makes it a little less likely, I think, in the end.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what will happen though.
Yes. Well, as I briefly mentioned, we do get a tribe switch here. Now, I don't know why, but they've been calling it a switch instead of a swap. And so I know I've been saying swap a little bit, but I don't know why they just changed the terminology on us this season. But a tribe switch, we're calling it now. So it's random selections here, and we get the new Siva tribe as Bianca, Cedric, Chrissy, Mitch, and Say. The new Logie tribe, Charity, David, Eva, Mary, and Star. And the new Vula tribe, Joe, Camilla, Kyle, Shaheen, and Thomas. So just before, once we just saw these tribes, did you have any initial reactions? Any tribe you thought looked really strong? Any tribe you thought would be in trouble here? What were your thoughts?
Well, I was happy that the Vula tribe didn't have to go back to Vula. Like, I was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. They get a better camp." But I feel like overall, like, I was kinda interested to see because especially with Eva not having Joe with her anymore, like, how Eva
Mm.
was gonna handle that being, apart from Joe, but it seemed like she was settling well with, like, and getting along with David, as we saw when they went back to camp, so that was good for her. But because Eva and Star then were together, like, that was interesting because they are the ones who didn't like each other, or, like, they were obviously going at each other on their tribe. But and I feel like with Siva, I was happy that Mitch also stayed in Siva because he was Siva strong, but I mean, everyone at that point, obviously they hadn't lost. So like at that point, Siva and Logie were like, "Oh, we don't want to lose each other," but they had to. But with Vula, it looked like because they had so many guys, it looked like they were gonna be like a really strong tribe. But we obviously see what happens there. But overall, like we know, like maybe the strength isn't always what's needed because there are puzzles and things that happen that can change that. So overall, I felt like it was a good mix of tribes.
Yeah, I think my first reaction was that I felt like Siva was probably the weakest physically of all the tribes. Just because, I mean, Logie has David. I mean, just by himself is enough to carry a tribe. And I mean, he's the only guy on that tribe. So I guess that, physically is maybe a little worrisome. But Eva's strong, Charity's strong. Like, I felt like they had a decent shot at winning. And then Vula, I thought was going to be the least likely to go to tribals because I mean they have all the guys, they have all the physical strength on their side, and I was really thinking that they were probably never going to go to tribal, but spoiler alert, that's not what happened. But yeah, I think that was just kind of my first reactions. I felt like on Logie, I felt a little bit concerned for Eva initially, just because the only person from her tribe that was there was Star, and so I felt like Star was going to kind of get in all the guys or everyone else's ear and just kind of talk, negatively about Eva and tell them about, everything that happened back there about Eva targeting Star, and kind of the opposite ended up happening, where Eva told everybody that she was willing to vote for Star and to get Star out. So I guess kind of the opposite happened of what I thought might. But yeah, that was just kind of my initial reactions, which mostly ended up being completely wrong. But that's the beauty of Survivor. You never know what's going to happen.
Yes.
So we start with the new Logie tribe. Like we kind of mentioned, Eva is upset to be away from Joe, but bonds very quickly with David. And like I said, she tells everyone she's willing to write Star's name down. She told them that Star has the beware advantage, just kind of spilled everything. And to me, I don't know, like I felt like if I was everyone else on that tribe, that would maybe make me a little bit suspicious of Eva. Just the fact that she was so willing so quickly to throw Star under the bus made me think she's going to do that to me too. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think she in that moment was just like, well, I don't want them to think I am working with her. So it was a way of her leverage that,
Yeah.
I guess, and like sharing other information that she had because information is power in the game. So I think in that moment, maybe it could have come across that way, but we don't know how everyone was perceiving it also. So maybe it was fine. They were just like, oh, thanks for this information. Like, that's good to know.
I'm sure that is how they took it. Yeah, I mean, like you're gonna savor every little piece of information you can get about what was going on at another tribe. But I just think like the amount of just immediately like I feel like there's a way to do it where you're giving them a little bit of information, but you're not giving so much that they feel like they can't tell me anything because I'm just going to go back to someone else and spell it. Like I think you want to like give the impression that you are trustworthy, that you know you're willing to keep some things private, but that you're willing to give enough to where they feel like there's some trust there. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I think that there's a little bit of nuance there that I don't think Eva necessarily got right, but it's not necessarily seeming to work against her yet. So maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? uh,
Yeah. We don't know right now
yeah.
because she hasn't
Well,
been in trouble.
that's true. That is true. Well, Charity, on the other hand, thinks that she is tight with David and can get him to go with whatever plan she wants him to go with. But David, on the other hand, gives an indication that he does not trust Charity, and he tells Eva, who you know obviously he seemingly has become close with on this tribe, that he wants Charity out. So I am a little bit concerned for Charity because we kind of got back on the old Siva tribe. I think it was maybe even episode 1. We got some indication that like Camilla was not trusting Charity. Now we're getting some information that David's not trusting Charity. Kind of to me feels like Charity might have a little bit of a skewed perception of where she falls in with her original tribe versus maybe what was actually going to happen if they ever went to tribe.
Yeah, no, that's what it seems like because I mean, obviously Charity doesn't know if others don't trust her. She's like, "Oh yeah, I've got David. Don't worry." And then that's not the case. So definitely could be some foreshadowing with that with like maybe people don't want Charity there. So I'm not really sure. Maybe it's like trying to skew us in a different direction and then that's not going to happen. But we don't know yet. But I think that I am worried for Charity as well.
Yeah. Well, moving over to the new Siva tribe, Bianca is worried that she's the only one from Moldavia on her tribe, and she also doesn't have a vote. So she's basically just kind of a sitting duck here if they go to tribal. And she talking with Say. Say tells her to get a vibe check from Cedric, and that sets off a little bit of a bell in Bianca's head that says maybe there's a little bit of a crack here that she can work with. So I think that was really smart of Bianca. I think that Bianca's a really smart player, I think. She seems very perceptive, and I think even though she is the only one from Logi on her tribe, she doesn't have a vote. I think that she is savvy enough and social enough. Like I think people seem to really like Bianca. So I really think that by the time they go to tribe, I'm glad they didn't go to the first one because that might not have been enough time for her to do enough work socially to kind of get in good with people and not have her be the easy vote. But I think even if they go to the next one, I think enough time has hopefully passed that she's able to kind of work her way in there.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Bianca, so I was worried like from the start of like seeing that she was kind of like the odd one there, but because of that, like they didn't go to tribal obviously this episode, and I think people do like her, and she's already getting along with Say, so I think with that also is going to help her, and hopefully she would not be the first one out.
I hope not. I'm interested to see her reaction at the next
I know.
challenge when she finds out who was voted out. But we will see. But Cedric and Mitch bond over Mitch's stutter, since Cedric used to also have a stutter growing up. And I thought this was a beautiful moment. I mean, you obviously were able to see Mitch's reaction watching this. So can you tell me a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, no, it was really nice to see that. I felt like everyone was just like, "Oh, this is such a sweet moment," and Mitch obviously appreciated it as well, seeing that aired. And I feel like we're getting a lot of this awareness this season so far of Mitch's stutter, and overall, like for the stuttering community, I think it's been really good. Like, it's all positive messages I think that are being shown. So I think that's been really nice to see. And obviously, Mitch has been doing really well in the game as well. So that's also been fun. But I'm glad that we were able to see that moment between Cedric and Mitch because it was very heartwarming.
Yeah, my first reaction to watching this was like, I feel like there was a time in around the time of like season 41, 42. era where Survivor was trying so hard to get these like moments of humanity and like these emotional clip packages of these castaways like earlier, especially kind of in the first few episodes of each season. And I don't think that they really knew how to do it, and they were doing it in a way that that felt forced, felt very much like it took you out of the game to see these like pictures and videos from back home and people talking in their confessionals about these emotional stories. And I think in the last few seasons, maybe it changed when they got 90-minute episodes and they had a little more time, but they've been doing it in such a more organic way of just showing conversations that they're having at camp. And it doesn't take you out of the game because you're watching an actual conversation and not just like a confessional that has nothing to do with the game or the scene that just came before or after it. And so now I think that showing a moment like this is so much more impactful and feels so much more organic than the way that they were doing it for a while. And I really loved this moment.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So I'm glad, and it seems that that meant like they also may trust each other now, which I always like seeing when they swap or switch tribes. Now it's like when they can find someone else with similarities or like
Yeah.
something that they can bond over, so that it's not just like this tribe against this tribe.
Yes, for sure. Well, Bianca and Say also bond and decide that they want to work together. The rest of the tribe, though, is planning to target Bianca. So, I mean, like I said, I hope that as the days go on, that Bianca is able to get in there and improve her place within the tribe socially. And I think she's very capable of it. And I think having Say on her side is going to be very helpful as well. I mean, obviously, Say has a connection with Cedric, so hopefully if they become close that they both can work some magic and get in better socially. So we'll have to see what happens, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, me too. Hopefully Bianca lasts.
Yes. Well, let's move over then to New Vula. So Thomas is still excited to be with his California girls, with Kyle and not Kyle, with Shaheen and
Yeah.
Joe. So they have the numbers at the New Vula. I mean, 3 out of 5. So it feels like they're in a very good place. That whatever if they go to tribal, whatever they want to happen is bound to happen. And Camilla and Kyle, on the other hand, are in the minority there, so they do some work to hopefully give themselves as good of a chance as possible, and they do that by pretending not to be very close with each other. Camilla says, she was on the old bottom of the old Siva. Kyle just kind of doesn't say that she's wrong when Camilla says that, so that kind of seems to indicate to everyone, like, oh, I guess she really was on the bottom because Kyle's just, not saying, "Oh no, you weren't." Don't be silly. That's wrong. So I think that they do a really good job of kind of separating themselves, and it seems to feel like everybody believes it.
Yeah. No, I thought that was so well done. I was impressed. I was like, wow, they're doing this so well because I would have believed them. Like, it didn't seem at all like they were acting, even though we know they were.
Yeah, I think that I would absolutely believe it. I really felt like they did such a good job. Like if they were acting, like I don't know that I could convince myself that they were acting if I was watching it because it'd be like they are just doing a really good job of making them seem like they do not like each other. So I absolutely would have bought it hook, line, and sinker. So good on them for being such good actors with that. And Camilla also decides to throw Thomas under the bus a little bit because she has some information that we see a flashback, which is pretty rare on Survivor. That we don't see many flashbacks on this show, and we see one of Star and Camilla on the out bench sitting out of a challenge. I don't know what do they call it? I don't
Sidelines.
know. Sure. And I don't watch sports. I don't know. And they are talking to each other about the journey that they'd gone on in that episode. And Camilla indicates that Thomas must have lied to his tribe about just walking away from the journey and not risking his vote because Camilla knows that wasn't an option, and that Mitch on their tribe had told them the full truth about what happened, and so she knows that this season, or at least in that journey, they did not have the option to just not play. So, how did you think about the way that she handled this here?
I thought it was smart for her to bring it up. I didn't know if she should have brought it up in this moment, though. Like, I didn't know if it was necessary to talk about because then, like, she couldn't. I don't know if she could tell, like, the dynamics yet of that whole tribe. Like, I don't know if she realized how close each of them were. Like, they were not going to turn on Thomas for her telling them this information in this moment, it seemed like, especially like this early on in it. So I feel like overall, like, it was smart that she recognized that, and like it did put a little bit of of doubt into their heads, but in the long term, it wasn't going to impact them in anything that they were going to change their vote over. But it's interesting that she did draw that comparison, though.
Yeah, I agree that I don't know that this was the right time for it, or at least like doing it in such a direct way as she did. Like,
Yeah.
I think that just kind of accusing him of lying right off the bat was maybe not the best way, especially when Thomas is somebody who you're gonna want to try to get not to vote for you.
Yeah.
And of course, the other two guys are gonna go tell Thomas exactly what she said, and of course, he's gonna deny it. So, I don't know. Like, I think that it's possible that this could have worked, where it puts a seed of doubt in the other two guys' mind. And it's possible, though, that, that they would just say, okay, we don't care, or like, we don't know who's telling the truth. Like, she could be lying. She's the one who's in need of saving here. So, she has nothing to lose. So I feel like there was probably a better way to go about it, but I like the idea that she was having. I think it's the right idea, maybe wrong execution.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we go then to the immunity/reward challenge. And at this challenge, tribes race to remove heavy sandbags to free up a large cube. They then roll that cube underneath the structure and use it to reach three small sandbags. They then attempt to toss those sandbags through a frame, land them in a barrel, and then finally they dig up one puzzle piece and race to solve a temple puzzle. Reward here is for the winning tribe a large collection of fresh fruit, for the second tribe a smaller collection of fresh fruit, and then for the losing tribe, absolutely nothing except tribal council. So now we have a little bit of a case of deja vu. Different people, same tribes. Lagi again wins, Siva again second, and then Vula once again loses and goes to tribal. I was personally shocked by this result. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I thought they were like the strongest team, and somehow Lagi still loses. I'm sorry, Vula still loses.
I know. That was also crazy because Siva came from behind when they were doing the puzzle. Like, Vula was there first to start the puzzle, and the
Hmm.
fact that they ended up losing it too, it's like, wow, this tribe is just cursed. Because not the people in the tribe, but just the green, the color of it. It's just this that tribe just doesn't have winning in their whatever it is. They can't win. But I felt bad because I obviously like people. I like people overall in all the tribes, but I felt bad because they also blew that lead. But also when I was watching it, I was with Mitch, and obviously it was exciting because then when his tribe won, I was like, "Yay, go Mitch!" And he was
Yeah.
really excited to see that in that moment. Obviously, he knew that they were gonna win in that moment, but it was then fun to like see his reaction live of like watching it.
Yeah. No, that's really cool.
Yeah,
So I've been hearing this theory over the last week or so that there is something to do with the beach that Vula this season is on. That if you go back to the new era, that a lot of these disaster tribes come from are on the same beach. And
wow.
I don't know if it's something to do with like I've heard that maybe the people on that beach tend to not get good sleep, that there's something to do with the beach. I don't know what it is exactly, because apparently like it's a nice beach, like there's nothing overtly wrong with it that's so much worse than the others, but something to do with that beach that gets a lot of those tribes to be those disaster tribes that just go to tribal after tribal. So I don't know if there's anything to that, but it certainly is an interesting note, I think, to kind of think about in future seasons if that continues to hold.
Yeah, I'll have to keep an eye on that because that is interesting.
There's so many fans who just like immediately know, like they can see one picture of a tribe and they like at their beach and they know exactly which beach that is. And like I am not that Survivor fan. Like I consider myself to be a very, very big Survivor fan. I can't do that.
I mean, maybe they should just go to a different country also.
Yeah, please tell me about it.
Yeah.
Ugh, I miss those days. I miss like I don't even need it every season, but like every 4 seasons, like every 2 years, switch up the location even. And I get it, I get it. They have a good deal with Fiji. It's a lot easier to be able to leave a lot of the stuff there, and I get it, but it would be nice. A change
Yeah.
of scenery for once. It's nice watching Australian Survivor, and most of the time they're in Samoa, which Survivor used to go to, and it's just like even though it's largely the same. Like they keep going to the same. It's just a nice change from Fiji.
Yeah.
But let's go then to the Vulutra camp back over there as they are going to tribal. California girls want to stick together and vote out either Camilla or Kyle, of course. Camilla and Kyle continue to pretend not to be close. They say that they're willing to vote for each other and that, they kind of plead their case. Thomas has a steal a vote, but says that he will only use it if he feels something weird is happening during tribal. And Camilla and Kyle both have an ace up their sleeve as well. Camilla has an extra vote, which he gives to Kyle to use for himself. Kyle has an idol as well, and he also plans to use that on himself. So, a lot of interesting elements here that, in a normal vote, Camilla or Kyle would seem to be the sitting ducks, but they both have some things that if they use it right, they can potentially have all the power.
Yeah. No, that was exciting to see because also like Thomas and the rest of the California girls had no idea that they had any kind of advantage with that. So they were all feeling great. Like they were like, well, who are we gonna choose? And they went with Kyle, and then Kyle was able to use his advantages. So it was like, well, just one. He didn't use the boat, but he was able to use his idol for that. So I feel like spoiler, but yeah, so for that, like, it was like interesting concept of like I knew, like, in my head, I knew he was gonna have to use it because he knew that he wasn't safe. But no one else knew that besides Camilla, so it made it exciting.
Yeah, and it's very important that the other three don't get any sense that something weird is happening
Yeah.
because if they do, Thomas is going to use to steal a vote and it will completely negate the Camilla and Kyle's plan. So that's very, very important that they take this very carefully so that there's no suspicion that either of them have anything. And if Thomas doesn't use his steal a vote, then they're scot free as long as they play it correctly. Then they can hold all the power here, and they decide that should everything go right, they are going to target Thomas. Do you think that this was the right move for them? Should they have potentially gone with one of the other two, Shaheen or Joe?
Well, I think for Camilla, it definitely was because she knew that Thomas was going to go after her. For Kyle, I don't know if it was the smartest, but I think at that point, like, Kyle was fine with any of those guys being up for whoever they chose. So I was sad, though, that it was going to be Thomas because I like Thomas and I really enjoy watching him. So I was like, well, it makes sense, but I also am sad about this personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the game, I think it makes sense.
I agree. I think that Thomas is, in a lot of ways, seems to be kind of the glue that holds them together. I think that he's really strategic, really smart. He knows this game. I think that I mean, look, none of them would have been a bad option, I guess. They're all three, very strong players seemingly. But I do think that Thomas is probably the one who is the one who's going to probably like I mean, Shaheen too. Like, Shaheen's obviously Adrian as well. So I don't know. I think either of those two probably would have been a really good move for them because they're both probably the two more strategic. Like, I feel like Joe is just a really nice guy. He's a really loyal player. I don't see Joe as being necessarily the most strategic, so I think that would have been a mistake, but I don't think that there's a wrong way to go between Shaheen or Thomas for them, probably.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, Shaheen goes through Kyle's bag and he's looking for an idol. Now, they don't find anything. He says he didn't do a full cavity search, but he seemed to look in, to do a pretty good, thorough search there. But somehow, he does not find the idol, which Kyle later says when Camilla tells him about what was happening, that it was hidden in his shoe. Now, this is interesting. Why was his shoe in his bag? Was
I
he
don't
wearing
know.
one shoe? Or is he not wearing any shoes? Was he just barefoot on the beach? That feels like maybe not a great idea.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it was just one shoe or where that was in the bag. Like that didn't really make sense. But I was nervous when Shaheen was starting to go through that bag. I was like, wait, like is he gonna find something here? Because we obviously knew that Kyle did have the advantages. So luckily he didn't. But like luckily Shaheen didn't find anything. But I think that that would have changed up what happened in tribal for sure.
Yeah, I feel like these days don't hide your stuff in your bag.
No.
Like if you find something, find another place to hide it. Hide it in your pants somewhere. I don't know, up your nose. Just something. Like the idols are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I feel like, and they're easily hid in other places that it does not have to be your bag. And I mean, it wasn't his bag. That's the crazy thing. Like, yes, they didn't find it, so I guess he did a good enough job hiding it. But like, don't put that in your bag and not leave it unattended. Like that just feels like a disaster waiting to happen. 'Cause they can't steal it from you, but they'll know you have it, and
Right.
that's not good. So
Yes.
then we go to tribal council. Kyle and Camilla get emotional talking about their time in the game. Now, I don't know how much of that was genuine versus them acting, but if that was acting, like, that was amazing performance. And I'm sure it was a little bit of both. I'm sure it was a little bit emotional. And, there's always a chance that your plan doesn't go right and this is your last tribal, but probably quite a bit of that was also gameplay. And I thought they did a brilliant job.
Yeah. No, I was super impressed. Like, I mean, they already were already doing well back at camp, but I feel like their tribal was even better because they're like really in the spotlight here of having those conversations, and so still winning over the rest of the tribe here was definitely like important to do here as well. So, and it worked. So it was good.
Love you, Danielle Reyes, but take notes.
Yeah. Exactly. She needs some pointers.
Yeah. Well, Kyle ends up using the idol on himself, and allegedly, we did not see this, but allegedly, Kyle did also use his extra vote. So it wasn't needed, but this was, I believe, confirmed in exit interviews that were done that Kyle did use his extra vote. So that is no longer in play for next week. I think there was a lot of thought that he potentially didn't use it because they did not show that, but I think apparently we'll see it at the beginning of next episode. Explain that he did end up using that as well. 3 votes for Kyle, all nullified. So Kyle and Camilla both vote for Thomas, and Thomas is sent home. I was really sad about this. I mean, Thomas, such a fun player to watch. I think he's a perfect candidate to me for like a second chances season that I hope we have in the future.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel like he captured a lot of people's like hearts and just watching this show. Like I feel like he just was so entertaining and just a really good player overall too. So I'm hoping I see him back as well in another season of Survivor.
Yes, for sure. Well, that was the end of Survivor for this week. Now, the previews for next week look very emotional. I don't know if you've seen the commercials, Molly, but Jeff Probst is crying.
Oh my
It
god.
looks to be, I don't know. I don't know what happens. It seems like something maybe at the challenge potentially happens. From what it feels like watching the commercials, and I don't know that it feels like maybe something with Eva, like she has some sort of like panic attack maybe during the challenge. I hope that's not the case. That seems really sad. But it seems like something potentially happens during the challenge that makes Jeff emotional, so I'm a little scared.
Yeah, no, I don't know what's gonna happen. Now I'm intrigued because I haven't seen
Yeah.
those.
Oh,
So,
yeah. They're showing them everywhere, it feels like, and it's just, like, sad music playing, and it's, like, 48 seasons in, we've never had a moment as emotional as this, I don't know. It's it's a different promo than we normally see for this show.
wow.
So,
Yeah, I'm curious what's gonna happen. Now I'm sad. Or thinking about it is like, is it gonna be sad?
I know, I feel like maybe I shouldn't speculate about what it is, but
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see.
Well, we'll have to wait and see that this coming Wednesday. But now, should we get into Temptation Island?
Yes, I'm excited to talk about Temptation Island.
Yes. So, as we were saying in the beginning of this episode, that this is the first season that is on Netflix, but it's not the first season of Temptation Island as a whole. But it is my first season watching it. So, I obviously knew like what the concept was from what you had described from the previous seasons that you have seen. But overall, just a quick recap of the concept is that there are couples who go into the show. They essentially break up because then they're living in separate houses with who are considered temptresses or tempters of people who are singles, then trying to get the people who came into the show with a partner to then leave essentially or like cheat on their partner and be with one of the people in they're living in the house with. So on both sides, guys get the girls and the girls get the guys living with
Yep.
them and go on dates together. So essentially, you're just trying to avoid the cheating, is what it seems like. Or if they're good, they avoid the cheating. Or if they want to not be with their partner anymore, or they're just very intrigued by certain people, then they will be cheating. Or if they don't want to stay with that person, then they don't consider it cheating. But I guess it's still technically cheating.
Yeah, and I think, like, the couples, oftentimes, they'll say, like, "I want you to explore because I want you to come
Mhm.
out of this 100% sure that you wanna be with me." So, like, they say, "I want you to, like, fully embrace the experience with certain boundaries." So, I think that most people going in aren't expecting their partner to just, like, twiddle their thumbs the whole time and, like, sit in the corner and just kind of wait for it to be over. They want them to talk with people and, just kinda get to know them, and that way they know going back to their partner, they're like, "Okay, I'm ready. I know you're the one. I wasn't tempted to do this, or I was able to fight it." Whatever they wanna say, like, coming out of this 100% sure that I wanna be with you.
Yeah, for sure. So it's that's the overall concept of it. So what are your thoughts on the show? Like what it entails?
I love Temptation Island. Yeah, I think, like, we've talked about multiple seasons of The Ultimatum, which I feel like is a very easy show to compare it to because it has a somewhat similar concept where it's couples going in, then they separate from their partner for a certain amount of time, come back together and decide if they want to leave with them or another someone else or alone. And I think that, to me, this is such a better concept in so many ways because The Ultimatum, it seems like, with the exception potentially of the queer season, which was very messy, the other seasons of Temptation Island that we've seen have kind of been a
Or the
little bit
ultimatum?
tame. Sorry, what did I say?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
the
Temptation
attempt.
Island, but
Oh,
it's
okay,
okay.
sorry, the
Yeah,
ultimatum.
yeah, I know what you
Uh,
meant.
like, because they end by spending the time with their original partner, I feel like they always end the show usually so much, like, more likely to leave with their original partner because that's the last person that they've spent time with. And so they're able to kind of end it knowing, like, okay, what I went through with the trial marriage partner was just kind of a wild experience, but not something that's gonna last. And then they kind of end it, like, probably for relationships, it's maybe a more healthy environment. But Temptation Island is so much messier because they don't see their original partner until literally the last second, the last conversation where they decide to stay or leave. And so they know what's been happening slightly with clips from the other side, which is also a different thing than we have on the Ultimatum. So I feel like, in terms of just, like, messiness and just, like, entertaining viewership, Temptation Island, I think, is the better show. and just format, in my opinion.
Yeah, I forgot to mention the bonfires, which
Yes,
is
of
when
course.
they get to see what their partner's doing on the other side. Like, so if they were kissing someone else or like whatnot, like we see them watching that, which is wild. Also, like having to watch that and then react to it live, like in that moment that you're
Mhm.
talking, you're just viewing this, and then you have to express your feelings, like is crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
and a lot of times the clips are a little bit edited to maybe look like worse than it actually is. Sometimes, the clips are cut off at a very distinct point that maybe if they'd continued watching for a few more sentences, they might not have been quite as upset about it. But, you know, that's reality TV for you. And I think that it's so brilliant because it just keeps making them more and more like upset with their original partner because every clip they see is worse than the last. And so it's like they come back to the villa so upset about what they just saw in the clip and they're ready to just like cheat on their partner, get back at them for what they just saw. And then by the time they finally get over it a few days later, they have another bonfire to make them even more upset. And it's just like this cycle that just keeps going and going and going. And it's very fun to watch.
yeah, fun to watch, not fun to be in, I'm sure.
No, but they know what they're getting into. This is not the
Yeah,
first season.
that's true. But yeah, so with this season, they also had a twist that was called the Temptation Haven. So within that, couples could go into this little tent thing, and if they did, no cameras are in there, and then the other villa would get red lights flashing that signify that someone went in there, but they didn't know who that was. So they would then think in their heads, like, is it my boyfriend, girlfriend, like going in there? So that I feel like was like I haven't seen the other seasons, so I don't know like what it's like without the Temptation Haven. But I feel like we didn't really get it for that many episodes, even
Yeah.
this season. So I don't think it really changed a ton. Like it did make Shantae really nervous, and that was like the really only big reaction that we saw from that. But
Mhm.
other than that, like I think it was kind of unnecessary.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a dud. I think that they absolutely should have had it for longer during the season, and that might have later on paid off more dividends. But last season they had something like a different version of that where they just had a light in each of their villas, and anytime somebody cheated, like didn't I don't know what I probably like actually had sex. I don't think they did it for like just like kisses. But anytime there was any like under the cover sexual activity, the light went off in the other villa. And it was a little bit different. Like I don't remember it being like flashing lights like everywhere in the villa. Like I think it was literally just like a light in the like
And like
living
sirens
area or
too.
something. Yeah, like they didn't have that. I think they literally just had like a big light like in one of the rooms, and so like usually someone's in the main living room like that, and so they would see it and then alert everybody else. But um like, I feel like, yeah, if you're gonna do something like that, have it there the whole time. Like, why only have it there for
Right.
one bonfire, 1 week? Like, that feels like a no-brainer to just keep that there the whole time, or like have a room. Like, it doesn't have to be I don't know. But yeah, I think they should definitely expand that in the future because I think the idea of it is really smart. That you kind of alert the other villa and they have no idea who it is, and it just makes everybody so paranoid and everyone thinks after their bonfire clip like, oh, that must be my partner, and then they go do something crazy and it actually wasn't. So that's always a distinct possibility. So I think that's a really interesting idea that hopefully they expand upon in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Like it does ignite that anxiousness and like just
Hmm.
overall like makes it for I guess some more drama, but it just needs to be better executed, I think, in the future.
Yeah.
Uh, but overall, this season was a really good season, I think, for being my first season watching it. Like, I really enjoyed it. Obviously, there's been a lot of chatter online about it too. Lots of hatred towards these men. So I feel bad in some ways of like hearing about how much hate certain people are getting because like it is reality TV.
Yeah.
Like they don't deserve to be getting death threats from people,
Oh god, no.
that's a
Never.
little bit aggressive, but, like, all these couples are going into Temptation Island, like, obviously except for basically, like, for the most part, it seemed like all of them had serious issues, that they were working
I mean, you kind
through.
of have to be willing to do a show
Yeah.
like this, right?
Yeah. So, like, you're already going into it on steady grounds, and so that's obviously gonna be not the greatest if you're already in that setting and then or in that feeling in that relationship you're in, and then they're gonna be around the opposite sex and people that they're attracted to and going on dates with them and like being tempted by them is gonna cause for something to happen, of course. So that obviously isn't ideal, but it's part of the show.
Yeah, I mean, 100% nobody should be getting death threats. Look, people, this filmed a year ago. Like, all of them are probably over whatever happened in their relationships. Like, I understand that, like, look, what Breon did, we'll talk about it, was not good. What Grant did was not good. Like, a lot of the men were not good boyfriends during this time, but nothing that anyone did deserves not only death threats, but just like hate in general. Like, don't go to people's pages and just like comment after comment spreading hate to them. Like, what is that going to do? Like, you have too much time on your hands. You're taking this too seriously. Go. I mean, look, I'm the last person to tell someone to go touch grass because that sounds gross. But like, don't take this show so seriously. Like, talk about it amongst yourselves. Don't send that hate directly to them.
Yeah. And it's also edited in ways that like maybe is gonna come across worse than is actually coming across like to them in person. Or like you don't know exactly all the stuff that's going down in these conversations because we're only seeing snippets of them.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, so let's get into some of these couples
Yeah.
that
Let's spread hate now that we just.
exactly. Well, we can start off with the happy couple first, Alexa and Lino. So they were dating for 3 years coming into the show, and early on in their relationship, Alexa cheated. So at that time, then it felt like after that, Lena wasn't fully able to forgive her for that, and overall, it just felt like he didn't feel as chosen as he wanted to be. In terms of their relationship, at least that's what we were seeing from the clips of them talking about each other. And then in the actual when they split up, they were obviously like really not doing anything with other anyone else in their villas. They were just friends with the people in the villa and really didn't going to explore things, but they also were seeing some of the clips. And in the beginning, it did seem like there were some things that were causing issues, but overall, like there weren't that many things that were causing them any strain into their experiences. It seemed more just like they just missed each other and they wanted to be back with each other.
Hmm.
Um, and then in the end, they get engaged. So they end up happy and still together to this day.
Yep.
And they're planning a wedding for next fall or 2 falls in fall 2026. And then they're planning to move to Florida together after they get married and Alexa finishes school. So back to what it was like for them a year ago, though, and on Temptation Island. Did you think that they pushed themselves enough to like try to explore other things during the process?
Um, I think what it's felt like to me was that they both realized pretty early on that they wanted to be back with each other. And so I think like once you kind of get that mindset of like, no, this isn't for me, like maybe I thought I was going to be a little more tempted or needed this, but very quickly realizing I don't really need this. I think it's probably hard to do that. I mean, it reminds me of actually, I mean, going back to the ultimatum. Remember there was that couple in season 1 that
Yeah.
just like very quickly before the changeover just decided that they were going to get engaged and like just leave the
Yeah.
process. Like That's kind of what this felt like to me a little bit, where it was just like so early on, they were both just kind of like simultaneously, without being with each other, just kind of came to the same conclusion and just kind of, going through the motions for the rest of it. And, their big thing was that Alexa felt like Lino couldn't get over the fact that she had cheated early on in their relationship, and he kept holding that over her head, and that was the one big sticking point that they needed to get over for him to fully trust her, and for them to be able to move on and have a happy relationship together. And that, I think that he did end up, like, I don't know whether it was at the first or second bonfire, but it felt like he was talking to Mark, who, by the way, I think is a fantastic host of the show. I
Oh,
just
yeah,
wanted to
Mark
say.
is great.
Yeah. And I think, like, he kind of said, like, yeah, she's right. I need to be able to get over this. This was something that happened a really long time ago, and I'm going to stop holding it over her head. And I think once they kind of just came to that conclusion, it was like everything else was just clicked. And yeah, I'm really happy for their engagement. I think that they seem to be a very happy, healthy couple, and I hope they live happily ever after.
Yes, agreed. So it's good that I guess they did grow on the show. Like you could see it from like in their interviews with like the producers, whoever. Like they're in the
Confessionals.
confessionals. Yeah, in the confessionals, like they were showing growth in that sense too, which was good to see. Just that they were realizing things about themselves that they maybe wouldn't have realized if they didn't come into the show. So maybe they didn't need to be challenged with other people, but they were just more so focusing like internally, like what they needed to do for the other person to fully move past what they were having issues with.
Yeah, and like it's maybe like they're probably, I would think, glad they came,
Mhm.
because they did end up growing through this. I just think that they probably could have ended this after like day 2 and had
Yeah.
the same conclusion. Like, I don't think that they felt like they needed to be there for as long as they were in order to come to the conclusion that they seemed to both come to very early on. But, I think whatever it is it is, and they seem to get exactly what they wanted out of this. And so I think they're both probably very glad they did it.
Yeah. For sure. Well, moving into our next couple was Shantae and Brian. So they were dating for 1 year going into the season of starting filming of Temptation Island. And early on in their relationship, Brian cheated. So lots of history of cheating here.
Yeah, and it won't
Um,
be the last one we see on here.
yeah. But overall, like they were having issues with that, and Shantae just not knowing if she could trust Brian fully, and if because he was also talking about how he wanted someone who was more sexual and things that like he wanted to do threesome with people, and overall just had these fantasies in his mind of like what he wanted, and didn't think Shantae could do that for him. But as we see, then Brian does have a threesome in the show, and then he realizes that he didn't need to. He just has enough with Shantae that he thinks that also that because he did it not in private, that Shantae will forgive him. And that she would understand, like, okay, he got it out of his system, and now he's like, I got it. Didn't need it, but now I did it. And I don't. I realize I don't need it. So I just want to be with Shantae, and then we see Shantae going through in her head too of like wanting to hear what Brian's explanation would be of it, because we see a little bit in the video, but he doesn't apologize for it. He says he doesn't regret it,
Oh my god.
but
This
then we also see then when they're talking at the final bonfire that he does apologize and that he feels bad for making her hurt in the way that she was feeling. So then they end up staying together. So they leave together and that they are still together to this day. And they're in therapy and they plan on moving in together once Brianne's lease is up. So sounds like they're actually doing well, which I feel like from the show you would be very surprised about. Like, why did Shantae stay with Brianne? That's what everyone's saying online. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, a lot. I I don't even know where to start with them. I feel like Brian truly thought that Shantae was going to be okay with his threesome. Like, I think in his mind, he did it thinking there's no way that she's going to be upset about this because she knows that wanted this and she's unwilling to give it to me. And so, because this is something that she would never feel comfortable doing with me, like, this is something, it's not cheating because it's not something that she can give me. If that make it that well, that doesn't make any sense. So I'm not even gonna say if that makes sense, but I truly think that was his justification of it in his mind. And then when he saw that Shantae was upset, he saw that clip of her crying about it. I think that was the moment where it clicked in his head, like, oh, she's actually upset with me about this. Maybe I did do something wrong. And I still, like, I just don't know that he really understands what he did wrong, but I think he, like, because he saw her upset, he's like, I know I did something wrong with this, but I still
Mhm.
think that just because he was able to justify it for so long and just defend it and say he doesn't regret it, I just feel like, unless, I mean, I'm sure they had a long conversation after this. Maybe now he does get it, but I don't think that he fully understood it because nobody explained it to him. So, like, he just saw her upset and then changed his tune completely. So I just, my mind thinks that there's no way that he really, at the time of the final bonfire, truly understood why she was upset. He just knew she was, and so he was going to say what he needed to say to, like, get her back.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously, I feel like Mark here was really impactful also with their conversations with Brianna in particular. I feel like he was able to get stuff out of him that, like, talking about his past traumas of like how he grew up and all that have also impacted how he views love and all this stuff. Like, he really didn't have a good example of that. And I think he was working through it actively, like in the show. And obviously, it's good that they're in therapy now together. That like they still seem to be like some deep rooted things there that have been issues that came into a relationship because they were prior issues for him. But like overall, I feel like if she's able to forgive him and like move past it, like I want to be happy for them because like I like Shantae, but also the same way I'm like she deserves someone better. And actually, Brian even said that in the final bonfire. He's like, "Well, yes, you deserve someone better, but like I want to be that person." So if Shantae still believes that Brian's that person, good for her, but I wouldn't put up with that.
I
And
just, yeah,
I
I
don't
hope,
know.
I wonder now that she's watched the show if that has affected anything of how she views it. Like, that has to be hard for her watching it.
Yeah,
I don't even, maybe she didn't watch it. I don't know. Maybe
I
that was
don't
too
know.
painful. But if she watched it, I don't know what's going to happen because I can't imagine that watching that was easy for her.
No, definitely was not. So
But I hope whatever happens, I hope that either he has changed and is working on himself and that they have a very healthy, happy relationship, or that she's able to move on and find someone who is better for her. Either way, I just hope that whatever is the decision is the right one for her.
yes, for sure. And maybe I think they're also probably going on podcasts coming up. I know I heard some rumors of the cast going on some podcasts, so maybe they can clear up some of those things too of how they are
Yeah.
today and if she watched the show back and what her thoughts were on that. So I'm curious to hear if I hear anything with that because everyone I feel like has been online except for Shantae and Brianna. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that has to do with the fact that they were getting a lot of hate,
Yeah, I'm
which
sure.
isn't great. So like they didn't want to come online and then just be bombarded with like, "Wow, you're a terrible person for staying with him," or like all these things that like she doesn't want to be reading that. Um,
Yeah,
so
I saw somewhere
overall,
that Netflix is working on getting them all on a podcast because Netflix has their We Have the Receipts podcast that I
yeah,
think probably I would imagine that if they're kind of working some last minute reunion type thing, that it would kind of just be like on that podcast, that they might potentially have them all on sometime next week. So we'll
Yeah.
stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what that's all about. But going into our next couple was Taylor and Tyler. They dated for 2.5 years. Tyler was previously married for 6 years and then started dating Taylor right away. There was no grass that grew in between, as they
I'm
kept
sorry.
mentioning.
How old was he when he got married? 6 years? And then dating, they've been dating for, so that was 8.5 years ago that Tyler was married. How old was he?
I guess he was like 20.
Oh my
I
God.
think he was young. Like he was really young. So I'm surprised they even lasted 6 years if they got married that early. And obviously, like they were also having issues because like there was really no time for Tyler to be single, and they just started dating right away. And obviously, it seemed like there were issues also with Tyler not having a job for the past year, and Taylor was just pretty much picking up all of his slack. And we see immediately that then Tyler has a connection with Kay. And even in the very first episode when they show all the temperatures come in and they give the bracelets, Taylor was already concerned. She's like, oh yeah, like Kay and Tyler are gonna hit it off, and that's who it was. Um, and because Tyler loves the blondes, and literally they look very similar.
Oh my
Uh,
God, and his
his
new
current
girlfriend looks
girlfriend,
identical to Kay,
yeah,
that I thought it was Kay. I
yeah,
swear, when I looked at Tyler's Instagram, I was like, oh, he's still with Kay. And then I looked at their tag and I was like, do more with Lore. I'm like, that's a weird Instagram handle for Kay. And then turns out it's not Kay.
yeah. Well, yeah, because so Taylor, obviously at the end she does not want to stay with Tyler, and Tyler does leave with Kay, but then shortly after they ended things, they just realized that they weren't aligned on their last date, so they didn't really leave together. They were just like, okay, we'll leave together, but then not, I
Yeah.
guess. But now Tyler is with this new girl who also, as you're saying, looks identical to Kay. Her name is Lauren Bennett. And he hasn't seen Kay since filming ended, but has seen Taylor multiple times. That they had a long conversation after running into each other in the gym, and they discussed reconciling. What?
Nope. Reconciling.
Reconciling. I know.
Good
They
try.
discussed reconciling, but that never happened, which is good because they were not meant to be together. But then, and obviously, he also needed some work on himself because he really wasn't single by any means for any long periods of stretch or any time at all. And for Taylor, her update is that she is single. And but it seems to be that maybe there's something with Yemen, but I don't know for sure. Like they're posting some videos together on TikTok, but I don't know if that means they're friends or
They're
they're
probably
dating.
just friends, yeah.
Yeah.
Like at this
Um,
point, if like it's been a year since they filmed this, I feel like if they were gonna date, they would be dating by now, right? Like I feel like I don't know. I just can't imagine that all of a sudden, like a year later, they would start dating. That would feel a little weird.
Yeah, I agree. But also Taylor also claims that when Tyler was already with Lauren, his current girlfriend, when he called her after their run in to talk about potentially getting back together, he was already with Lauren then. So
Hmm.
she's now blocked him and never spoken to him since. So I feel like Tyler didn't really learn from his mistakes and overlaps there, or having no space in between people. But maybe Lauren is the right one for him. I don't know anything about her, but maybe it seems to be they're happy if they're still together. And Kay is single and she dated her ex boyfriend for a while, but now is casually dating someone new. So for that, really nothing remained the same from when they left, except for that Taylor is still single. But I feel like in this show, obviously we saw Taylor and Yemen hit it off, but it didn't seem like that was going to be something that was going to last for that long. And for Tyler and Kay, it did seem like things were going well, but it just seemed like it was too fast of like you just got out of this other relationship that you found right after you divorced with your ex. So like with that, like he doesn't didn't it didn't make sense for it to continue in that moment. I thought like maybe it was gonna reconcile later, but then he found someone else. So
Yeah, like I wouldn't have been surprised if the update had said like, oh, that he and Kay tried to make it work for a while or like didn't talk for a month and then, reconnected and started casually, seeing each other. I could have seen that happening because I felt like they really were a good match, it seemed like. Like
yeah.
they had just had instant chemistry. But yeah, I mean, Tyler obviously needed time to for himself to heal and to really work on himself a bit. I feel like he got together with Taylor at a bad time, probably where he was still getting over his 6 year marriage. And now going into this, like meeting Kay, he's still literally with Taylor. Like he just never had that time to be single and to just kind of really work on himself. And I think that's what he needed. But yeah, I just think that Taylor I think that she probably should not have talked about Tyler to the guys the way that she did, saying that he has bitch tendencies and things like that were probably unnecessary. And if I was Tyler and watching that clip, I would think, like, okay, so she doesn't want to be with me. Like, I should move on because she did that before she ever saw any clips of him. So that wasn't in retaliation to anything necessarily. So yeah, I think that that was a mistake on Taylor's part, but I absolutely think that she deserves somebody who isn't going to immediately come on a show like this and connect with someone and forget Taylor ever existed. So, I think that they were just not meant to be together. They were never going to work. So I hope that they both find their right partners that clearly should not be each other.
Yes, exactly. Well, speaking of that, same goes for Ashley and Grant.
Even more so.
Even more so, they were dating for 1.5 years going into the show, off and on. But early on in their relationship, Grant cheated. So Ashley always had a thought that like Grant's really not trustworthy there, and obviously we see that pretty much right away. He also connects with someone in the other villa with him is with Natalie. And Ashley, after seeing that Grant is with Natalie, she actually starts to dive more into her connections that she was forming with. She had two guys. She had Danny and Logan, but chose Danny to more so form that with.
Now
And
that could have been our Temptation Island threesome.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
We could have had one on the women's side as well. But for that, we also see with Grant, with Natalie, they had sex in the bathroom. And then Ashley went into the Temptation Haven with Danny. So that obviously, like, we don't know exactly what happened there. It seemed like they were just kissing mainly, but they were obviously enjoying time with other people in their own villas. And in the end, Ashley decides to leave with Danny. And Grant says he's gonna leave alone, but doesn't really because he does stay with Natalie afterwards. But then he cheats on Natalie with Ashley. Um, and, and Ashley, because she didn't stay with Danny for very long. They go back and they just stay. They leave together, but then they don't stay together. They still
Yeah.
are friends. It sounds like, but it fizzled out. But what's the crazy part is how Grant and Natalie were dating, and then him cheating with Ashley. So that I was like, well, why did Ashley even do that? But it was seems to be toxic and still is toxic relationship that was going on. She just needs to fully cut him out. But yeah, it's just wild that's happening now. I feel like I don't know if you heard it or saw the clip that I sent you from TikTok live that was happening. But Grant was yelling at Ashley over the phone on the live that
Oh, no,
Ash
I don't think I saw
oh, oh
this.
my gosh, it was crazy. You have to watch it when we get off this, but Ashley and Natalie are friends. Like, they're fine. They're cool with each other.
Yeah,
And they were on TikTok live together, and Grant was just mad because of the way that Ashley, I think, was showing, like, expressing
portraying, yeah.
feelings about Grant now, because he thought things were cool, I guess, and he was not okay with the way she was talking about him.
Oh, wow.
And so he's just was mad about that. Yeah.
Wow,
And he
interesting.
exposed text messages also on his story. Like, it's pretty messy with them.
Wow.
But Natalie is
We
not
need a
talking to him.
reunion,
I
Netflix.
know, I
Every
know.
other season of Temptation Island besides season 1 of the USA version had a reunion. And we need and this keeps happening. Season 1 of Temptation Island on USA Network was the best season, and it was the one that didn't have a reunion because they didn't expect it to be as big of a show as it was. And then every other season after that had a reunion, but those seasons weren't as good, and they didn't like need reunions as much as season 1. And now we need another reunion here and we're not getting it. So that's why
Yeah.
we can't have nice things.
Yep. But we'll get a podcast, so hopefully those live up to what we need. But yeah, because then it's like still ongoing, and Natalie's on live like every single day. Like, I've actually watched some of her lives, and I like
Get your
Natalie.
coin, girl.
Yeah, she's doing well. But she said that as soon as she found out what happened with Grant and Ashley, she just cut off communication. It was like, this isn't
Yeah.
what I want. This is not how I roll. So I'm proud of her for standing up for herself with that, and she didn't want to deal with any of Grant's bullshit.
Hmm.
And as we know of now, is that Grant is still single, working on himself, whatever that means. And and Danny is single as well, because a long distance relationship with Ashley wasn't gonna work. And then, I mean, Natalie said that how they reconnected was that he invited her to join him on a work trip a week later, and he asked her to be exclusive. But then, obviously, we know about the cheating that happened, so then that ended things, and have not talked since. And overall, there's so many layers here, but
Yeah.
I feel like Ashley and Grant, going back to them, I feel like they just were never gonna trust each other. They were just not good together whatsoever. You could see it just from the beginning of when they came onto the show. It already felt like they were breaking up, like in the beginning, and you're like, okay, like there's no way this couple is gonna stay together. And obviously, that's what happened. They break up like pretty much immediately, is what it seems like. But it's good that hopefully now Ashley does not go back to talking to Grant, or at least, like, I think she just wants to be nice and like try to be friendly, and it's just not gonna work. Like, they just need to not be around each other. But they were both on the same show, and now they're gonna have to probably talk because of podcasts and things like that. But
Yeah.
other than that, I hope they don't talk to each other.
Yeah. No, they seemed extremely toxic before they ever stepped foot. I mean, it was an on and off relationship for a year and a half before this, and seems to be on and off after this. So, yeah, I mean, they should not be together by any means. I think that I was proud of the way that Ashley handled the final bonfire. And
Mhm.
I mean, they seem to kind of agree for the most part that, like, yeah, realized we should not be together very quickly here. But, I'm glad that she enjoyed her time in the villa. He clearly enjoyed his time with Natalie. And, I hope that they clearly didn't get their answers because they got back together after this. So this was all for naught. But, you know, we always need a messy couple on Temptation Island, and this was our messy couple on both sides. So I was glad that they were there, but clearly very toxic, and yeah, should not have been together. But and Ashley, I think, knew when she left with Danny that that probably wasn't going to actually work out in the outside world. But they had a good connection, so why not give it a shot?
Yeah, and I've seen TikToks with her, Danny, and Logan together.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, it's good. They're all still friends.
Yeah, and she said that she's still in contact with Logan, probably more so than Danny, it seems like now, actually,
Yeah.
and that they're friends, but probably won't actually date. So,
Yeah. but it's nice to see. I feel like all the guys who were in the villa with the girls, like they were all really nice guys, and it seems to be that they're all still friends with each other, which is really nice to
Yeah.
see. Versus the girls' side, I don't think they like any of those guys.
No.
But yeah, so that's been good. Also, like the girls' friendships with each other was really nice
Yeah.
to see that throughout the season when they were all supporting each other. So overall was good to see, even though they were all getting cheated on. Basically, that they stuck together. And
Yeah, the girls all had a good bond. It seemed like the four girls, especially, that was really nice to see.
yeah, and I saw a TikTok about the guys. It was like, these are the blind leading the blind. Like, it's just, they don't know what to do. And at least Mark was there to put them straight at times and
Yeah.
tell them what they should be doing better. So
And
that
I
was
kind
good.
of forgot to mention this, but I loved, it was so sad when Taylor at the bonfire said, like, oh, all the guys leave me and I would leave me too. And I loved that the next morning Mark was there. I guess they had an elimination that morning, I think. And Mark was there and he pulled Taylor aside and was just like, this stuck with me. Like, you should not feel that way. Like, he was really, really good about that. And I feel like that's what sets him apart from like Vanessa and Nick on Love is Blind and The Ultimatums. I feel like they're very like reading a teleprompter, like they don't really stray from that as much, and they don't really like seem to form these deep connections with the cast as much as Mark does. And I think just being at those bonfires and hearing all of them talk about it's like this therapy session, and I feel like he just really connects with these people, and I think that that's a really strong aspect as a host to have that
Oh,
relationship
yeah,
with the cast.
definitely. Mark was a great host. It seemed like he was a therapist, but
Yeah,
apparently he's
she should get his
not.
license.
Yeah,
Truly,
he should. He definitely had some good talking points.
yeah,
But overall, this season was messy and also good in the end of seeing an engagement and one couple
yeah. It was
proposing.
heartwarming ending.
Yeah. So two couples did stay together, and then two of the couples that we knew were not good together did break up. So I feel like that was pretty expected, but I'm curious to see what's gonna happen. There's more drama with the Grant Ashley of it all.
Oh, there
Hopefully
will
not.
be.
Yeah, I know. I don't want there to be,
Yeah,
but
who
we
are we kidding?
understand. Yes. But that's it for Temptation Island this season. Hopefully, we will see more coming out on Netflix as well. I feel like that is a good platform for it. Obviously, they got a lot of traction this season, so I'm hoping it stays there. And we'll also be covering more Survivor next week. And we'll chat with y'all again next week. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts and following us at Let's Chat Reality on all social networks.
Bye, everyone.